Well, okay. We are live. Nice. Okay. Okay. You know what I've been thinking about a lot lately? What I have been feeling a lot lately actually is I've been kind of scared, just more nowadays than ever before. I generally like to think of myself as a pretty tough and strong willed, and I don't let a lot of things bother me. But especially since the car accident, like I can't wait to see the dash cam footage. I'm pretty sure I didn't scream. I'm gonna bet I didn't scream, but maybe I screamed like like I don't want to see. I don't want to belittle women, but I might have screamed like a girl. Huh? I might have screamed like that, but I mean, hopefully I didn't. But anyway, since then, I have been pretty scared of driving. Like when I was driving my dad's car a little bit, I was pretty scared. The first time I drove after the accident, we had to go pick up my rental car. And as I was pulling, so you have to take a left turn out of the rental car place to head back to my house. I took a right instead because left turns are a little scarier, you know? So I took a right turn and then I took a left turn. So I went all the way, like I went like this all the way around back to my house because I was a little bit more scared than usual. Like I was really, because usually I just go and, hope for the best, which probably isn't a good attitude to have while you're driving. But I really like was extra cautious and I still like feel uncomfortable driving. And what that makes me think about is I often associate my life to scripture. You know, in Proverbs where it says, the beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord, something like that, right? And it's such a weird passage because if we read it in English and just sort of take it at face value, it's like, oh, I should be afraid of God. And I think there is, so if you're afraid of God, that's probably incorrect, right? But I do think in life, there are things that are very powerful and impactful that you should have a healthy reverence, kind of respectful fear of. For example, your parents, I do think you should respect them. And then that respect sort of kind of brings about this healthy level of fear. And for me, driving, I should be more afraid because driving is a very serious thing. You know, in Colombia, we're driving 80, 90 miles per hour on the highway, right? Or most people are. Like sometimes I go 80 and it feels slow. But anyways, am I admitting to breaking the law? Other people are. I'm not. But anyway, some people out there are going, "Hey, hello." But anyway, like in South Carolina, people drive like that's normal, and it's really fast. And we should be more cautious, and we should respect the speed and the giant pieces of metal that are flying down the highway. You should have a healthy level of respect and fear when you're driving. Another thing too, I had to get a new car because I crashed my old car, and I had to get a new car, which is expensive and it's painful. Like I went to the dealership, and I had a lot of struggles with the dealership. Anyway, I have a much higher payment. Like it's, I don't know, it's manageable, but it's much higher than my old payment, and money scares me. Like because I grew up kind of poor, like money's still pretty, like it scares me. Some people might not respect it and they just spend money like it's gonna be, it's gonna last forever. But for me at least, I'm very cautious and I respect money like crazy because I know what it's like to not have it. And I think that's good. Like a healthy level of fear of things that are big and powerful, like money is powerful. The car you drive, it's a really big, powerful thing that can impact your life if it's handled inappropriately. And I think just the same way, we should have some kind of level, some kind of healthy level of respect and caution when we are dealing with God, because God has the power to give and take anything. And I think we take for granted that our God is gracious and good, and we shouldn't always. You guys know what I'm trying to say? So in life, there's a lot of things that I think we treat as very common, and like we just treat it like normal. But they're a heavy, oh my gosh, heavy. I keep saying heavy. Healthy level of fear, I think, is good for many things in life, including our relationship with God. I want to recap last week. What did we start doing last week? Last week we are in the book of Samuel, for Samuel, for the first time, and we're talking about Prophet Samuel's mom and her life last week. A glimpse of it. It was very, very challenging. Just to remind us of what it was. She was married to this guy named Elkanah, and she was barren. The Bible says. The Bible also says that. So it's in hindsight, and I think it's like the way the writer of the Bible understands it, but the way that the Bible writer understands this situation, he is saying that Hannah's womb was closed by God. God was causing her barrenness. God was causing her not to be able to have a child. And I think there's a lot of implications when you make that proposition. But Hannah, because of that, because God was closing her womb, not preventing her from having a child, it generated a lot of suffering in her life. Because if you're a lady back then, having a child is one of the biggest, most important goals of your life. Like there's purpose behind it, there's meaning behind it. It's not only for your family's financial health, but also for your husband's name to continue. And if you can't have a child back then, it's social stigma. You feel shame. You feel broken. You're not fulfilling your purpose in life. I know that sounds crazy, but it's a very one of the really big important purposes in a woman's life. It's to get married and have a child, and that child will continue the name of your family. And for Hannah, her husband had to get remarried because she was barren, and she had to see someone else fulfill what she wanted to do for probably her husband and family. You know what I'm saying? And that woman too, she wasn't even nice about it. She was like, you can't have a baby, you can't have it. Like she threw it in her face all the time and bullied her. And I want us to, because the Bible too, the Bible talks about Hannah, like her suffering very quickly. It happens within 10 verses. But imagine what your life might be like if the thing that you wanted to do more than anything, you are too broken. It feels like your body is broken, like something about you is incorrect. God made mistakes. I'm making a mistake. Imagine how deeply in anguish and suffering you would be. A lot of us sometimes, right? We have felt that sort of anguish and suffering, and we hope, oh man, I'm not in some seasonal depression. I think we all go through it, especially Thanksgiving, December. And some of us go through, like this feeling not so very good. Imagine feeling not so very good, like the worst feelings you could possibly have. And Hannah experienced that for years. We hope that a difficult season in our life only lasts for a season, like winter. It's a tough time. Hopefully, when spring hits, it'll be much better. But for Hannah, imagine days and weeks and months and years of feeling this deep, bitter, like this, you're on the brink of tears every single day. Yeah. Can we relate to that? Like how deeply, painfully, like your heart is being shredded kind of feeling every night and every day, and you can't sleep and you're having trouble waking up. And when you wake up, your life is just not good and it's just miserable. And you try to go to sleep, and that you're not getting enough rest. You're always miserable. Imagine how that must feel for weeks and months and years of your life. I don't. I'm just gonna assume many of us have not experienced something like that, right? Most of our difficult times, a few months, a couple years, right? But for Hannah, some people we don't know exactly, but we can assume that it was for years, and some people argue it might have been decades. Yeah, imagine being in anguish every day for 5, 10, 20 years of your life. Huh? Actually, a lot of people are in anguish, right? Like when Moses is in the wilderness, God's people for 40 years actually in the wilderness as well. Hundreds of years when they're in Egypt and enslaved. Like there are really years sometimes in the Bible describes years of people's lives where they're in enslavement, suffering, anguish. And then Hannah continues to have faith, though. Why? Why do I say that? It's because every year she continues to go and worship at that place, Shiloh. She goes every year and continues to worship God. Right? That's a tough thing to do. I think a lot of us would have lost hope years ago if we were Hannah. But she continues to be a good servant, a good faithful person. But that doesn't mean her feelings go away. Like remember last week, she goes to this is really important. She goes to the temple and she's bitterly weeping while everyone else is worshiping, having fun, and celebrating. Hannah goes by herself to the church and she weeps bitterly by herself and prays to God, like, God, will you please remember me, grant me a son, and if you give me a son, I will give him back to you, and he will be yours forever. That's the vow that she makes. Yeah. And then she goes home, and then a little while later, she does conceive, and she has a baby named Samuel. And she names him Samuel because Samuel means God hears, like God heard me. Yeah. Last week, the biggest point is that God can be, right? God can be sovereign in your suffering. I want to say God is, but I think that will make us, some of us might feel kind of a certain way about it. Because I do believe, like always, God is always sovereign. And even in the most difficult, tragic, broken times of life, God is somehow still in control of it. Yeah. Even when you're suffering for years and years and years, I believe in a God who is in control of that stuff. And he can be, right? He can be. I think we can think that he is able to be sovereign when nothing is working out. Yeah. We hope things won't work out for a few weeks or months, right? Hannah, for years and years and years, things weren't working out. And it caused bitterness and difficulty and anguish inside of her. But somehow she was still able to trust God. Hannah doesn't accomplish a lot of things. I think in a few pages, in a few chapters, she'll not really be talked about, but that's tremendous faith being described. Yeah, that's hard. It's easy to have faith when you're splitting the sea. No offense to Moses, but when you're doing like giant stuff and you see miracles all the time, sure, maybe it's easier to have faith when you see nothing happening. I think that's, for me, a harder place to have faith. Yeah, Moses' life was hard. I'm not trying to belittle Moses at all, but when nothing is going your way, nothing is happening, you see no progress, when you have faith there, I think that's really, really impressive and special. I can't even imagine having that kind of faith, the kind of faith that Hannah had. Oh, okay. So, but eventually we do see that Hannah's prayer is answered by God. She prays for, I'm sure she's been praying for years and years and years, and eventually God answers the prayer and lets her have a child, and that child's name is Samuel. And I don't want us to think, oh, if I wait and pray, then God will answer my prayer. Yes and no, right? Sometimes God will say, no, no, that's not it, right? Sometimes God will deny, I think, some of our prayer requests because it's not meant for you. The reason why Hannah got her prayer answered is because it was part of God's will. Yeah. It wasn't just so you can be happy. A lot of us, we have a lot of prayer requests. I'm sure we've prayed this prayer before, similar, but definitely not exactly the same. God, if you do this, I'll do anything you want, right? God, if you do this, I'll do anything you want. And sometimes God happens and he, does the thing that you asked for and you forget about it. Isn't that a very common experience in all of our lives? God, I really wanted this, and then God blessed me, and then, oh, I'm so thankful God blessed me. And then you're the same person a year from now. You know what I'm saying? But Hannah, right? Hannah's prayer was answered not just because she wanted it, but because it was part of God's plan and will for her life. Yeah. And that's the kind of prayers that will be answered in our lives too. A lot of us, we're praying a lot of things that have nothing to do with God's will. I'm not trying to say anything you pray for, you'll get eventually. That's definitely not it. But Hannah's specific prayer was answered, and God did an amazing thing through just a seemingly normal person who was barren, right? This is a very broken life person, and God was able to do a tremendous thing because Samuel, her child, is going to be Prophet Samuel, and Prophet Samuel is the beginning of a brand new season for God's people. And that happened, right, through a woman whose life that most people probably didn't care about. And that's our God. God does amazing things through very common people. I want us to see that as well. And her prayers were answered. Definitely, right? Definitely her prayers were answered, not in the time that she wanted, but God's timing. Yeah. And the reason for the delay, a lot of it, like very often, the delay in answering prayers is because you're not ready for it. And God needs to prepare you for it. But a lot of us, we don't want to struggle through the preparation. But you got to. You have to struggle through the preparation. You have to struggle in the delay. And that delay, too, at the very least, Hannah had to trust God. And that's a beautiful thing. Like every day during that delay, she had to because she couldn't trust or do anything else about it. All she could do is pray and hope that God would show her favor eventually. And that preparation season of delay is very, very important. God's timing is always going to be better than our timing. Yes? So that's what we talked about last week. This week, Hannah gives her son back to the Lord because she said it, right? She said, if you give me a son, last week, she said, if you give me a son, God, I will give him back to you, like wholly back to you. It's not just, oh, he'll live a good Christian life. Hannah's going to give him away. Isn't that crazy? That's a crazy thing. This is what I've wanted. This is the only thing I've wanted for decades of my life. And through weeping and bitter and anguished heart, I'm going to let it go and give it back to God. That's a tremendous thing. We're going to see it right now. Here we go. 1 Samuel, verse 21. 1 Samuel, verse 21. Here we go. When her husband Elkanah went up with all his family to offer the annual sacrifice to the Lord and to fulfill his vow, Hannah did not go. She said to her husband, after the boy is weaned, so when the boy is like old enough to sort of eat and be by himself, after the boy is weaned, I will take him and present him before the Lord, and he will live there always. So the baby's growing up, and they're still living their life of life, and then yearly annual ritual go worship God in this place. And Hannah doesn't go. She hasn't been going for a little while. Why? Because she's preparing the son, and she's getting ready to give him fully over to God and ministry. Crazy, okay? In verse 23, her husband supports her by saying, do what seems best to you. That's actually very unique, I think, especially during her time. Her husband Elkanah told her, stay here until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord make good his word. So the woman stayed at home and nursed her son until she had weaned him. Verse 24, after he was weaned, she took the boy with her, young as he was, along with uh, a 3-year-old bull, an ephah, of flour. So that's a lot of flour. And a skin, give me a second, a 3-year-old bull. Okay, a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh. When the bull had been sacrificed, they brought the boy to Eli. Remember Eli the priest? And she said to him, pardon me, my lord, as surely as you live. I'm the woman who stood here beside you praying to the... Remember me? You thought I was drunk, but I was praying? Remember me? I'm back. Verse 27, I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For the whole life he will be given over to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. This is the word of God for today. Crazy thing. That's a crazy thing. Can you imagine? Like, I know a lot of us say it, right? God, I'll do whatever you want if you give me the thing. And I know that God has answered that prayer, and we definitely have not done our part of it. And that's okay, because God, shows grace and we're sinful. But she actually does it. She says, God, please, 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 please. For years, for years, like maybe decades, she's been praying, God, all I ever want, like, please take away my shame and my brokenness. Like, I feel incomplete and I feel terrible all the time. Can you please remove my suffering by granting me a child? And she says it, I'll give him back to you. Like, he will be yours. And then the crazy thing for me, she actually does what she says. I actually don't know any Christians like that. To be honest, like, I am not a Christian like that. There's a lot of times when God, please bless me with a car. I got it. I really like it. It's mine. It's going to be mine. I'm going to use this. You can have it a little bit, right? We pick and choose what we want to give God, but Hannah is not like that at all. And I think, right, I do think the reason why God is doing this special thing through Hannah and Elkanah, because they're a special family, like special and unique faith. And God sees that and uses that. And I don't think it's a surprise that Hannah is able to do this thing. I think anybody else, if I was Hannah, and like I really like I can't even imagine having a son. It doesn't make any sense in my brain. But if I was able to have a son with my body, and that's an ordeal. Like watching Sunga, be pregnant for 9 months and then have a baby. I only saw her once a week, but man, she looked like she was struggling. She had a watermelon in her belly. Like eventually it was watermelon, and she was like, my back hurts, I can't sleep. I was like, you can't ever take a break. There's no break in pregnancy. It's not like, here, let me take this off for a little while and move it somewhere else, right? 9 months of that. Imagine if you're a lady, 9 months of that, like just difficulty. Oh my gosh, physical. And then after that, you produce this child, and then you give him away. Huh? That's a crazy thing that she does. There's a few things I want to see. I want us to see. I already talked about some of this stuff. Oh, the main point of today. Before we get to the main point, I want us to see like Samuel is produced in this family of faith, and I think like there's a lot to be said about that, because a lot of our faith, it's not just ours. Like Samuel wasn't born with faith, but Samuel is going to live a really so the life that Samuel is going to live, she's giving him over to the work of the Lord, like into ministry full time forever, because they're about to go home. They're leaving their young child here, and trusting God to take care of him and use him. And they're going to go home and he's never going to, I mean, like maybe they see each other. I'm pretty sure they see each other, but they're like saying, he's no longer my son. He's God's, right? She's fully giving him over to the Lord. And Samuel, his faith, I think it comes from his family. And the family, the community, it forms our faith. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. Specific families, if you're trying to build a family with another person, and if you have children one day, that the faith that you have, absolutely, it affects the people younger than you, and for us too, right? Being a church family, like the faith of our each other, it's being formed by our community. And Hannah and Elkanah, for some reason, right? They're just regular folks, but Hannah especially, man, the commentaries about this passage say that Hannah wasn't just physically preparing Samuel, but spiritually preparing him for the life that he was about to go into. Yeah, and Samuel's faith is directly it's related to her parents' faith. That's why the young kids, I tell y'all, like, being a Christian is important. You meeting another Christian, that's important because it affects everything about your life. Like, you meet the wrong person, it'll ruin your life, 100%. Trust me. I've been the wrong person to a lot of people, and they've ruined their lives. Hey, anyways, but I'm telling you, like, something very special about this family, and it formed Samuel to become the person, or at least in the very beginning, helped him to become the person that he was going to become. Faith that forms us, right? I want us to think about that. But the really big point of today, I kind of talked about it already. I'm just going to put it out there one more time that, delay is not denial. Yeah. Delay is not necessarily denial. Um, a lot of us, oh God, why isn't this the time? Being patient with something that's even like right in front of you, it's really, really hard. Having patience in life, because we can go get it ourselves. But I think in whatever situation, right? However close the opportunity might feel, I think in everything that we do, good or not so good, we have to think like, God, is this part of your timing? Because God's timing is so important. Because a lot of times we can ruin something by being impatient with it all the time, maybe every time. Patience is so important. You have to ask, are we regularly asking God, this job I want, is it part of your time or can I do it on my own? Right? The family plans that you have, God, is this part of your time or am I trying to rush into it and probably break it by rushing into it? But for at least Hannah, just because it was delayed doesn't mean her prayers were being denied. What was actually happening, and it's hard to see, right? It's hard to see if you're in Hannah's shoes or sandals. If you're in Hannah's sandals, it's really hard to see what's going on because the prayer is almost never being answered. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just a little while her prayers weren't answered. It's not just a few years, but possibly decades of her life. For her, that feels like a denial, when in actuality, in hindsight, it was a delay, yes? And just because it's delayed does not mean it's being denied. And the reason for the delay is one, preparation. I think Hannah become so for her, I don't know what her faith was like before because we sort of just walk into her life at the end of it right here. But Hannah, I'm sure she wasn't ready to have a child like Samuel. Like the weaning years, God was preparing her and her faith so that she could have Samuel at the right time and her be spiritually ready to lead Samuel for the first few years of his life. You guys see that? I don't think Samuel can become who he becomes if he is given to Hannah much, much earlier in her spiritual walk with God. Yes? I mean, I'm sure there's other things too, but you guys see what I'm trying to say? Like, God is preparing you. God's preparing your heart. God's preparing the circumstances of your life. And when the iron is perfectly hot, that's when you strike, and that's when everything falls into place and things work out for the best. And we have to trust, even though it's taken a lot longer than we wanted to, that God is making it work out, and we have to trust that God will do it. Yes, we have to trust that God will do it when He wants to do it, and that when He wants to do it, it's the right time. And I think for Hannah, that's the message of her life. Yes, her testimony is, man, you know what? The last 20 years, maybe, right? The last 20 years of my life were very, very difficult, but I can see that God did it at the right time when I was ready. Even though I felt like I was ready for the last 20 years. Yes, for the last 20 years, I felt like I was ready to have a child. But I can see now that I wasn't, and God did it at the right time. Even in the midst of my suffering, like she suffered for a long time. That's hard to say. Man, I suffered for years and years and years of life, but I'm sure at the end of it, she's able. You know why? Okay, okay, here we go. You know why I know she was able to say that? Her offering just now in the Bible, she says she brought the bull and the big giant pot of flour. That's an extravagant. It's so like we tithe 10%. For her, that's like tithing 200%. It's a giant offering, and she's saying with gratitude, man. The 20 years of my life I was suffering, but now I'm able to say God is good, and God knew what He was doing, and God delayed my prayers from being answered, but it was not being denied, and He was in control of all of that stuff. And even though I'm out here after 20 years of suffering, I'm able to say, "Thank God, thanks be to God." Right? That's a crazy, that's a crazy thing to say at the end of it. Yeah. After a 10, 20, 5, 10, 20 year journey of suffering, to be able to say at the end of it that God is good. Oh, here's another way that maybe Hannah wouldn't have been prepared earlier, because she vowed, right? She did vow to give him the son, give the son back to God. Maybe she's not able to do that if she was a little bit more immature. Does that make sense? Because this child was always going to be, he was going to be, he's a prophet of the Lord, by the way. He's a prophet of God, a really, really important prophet of God. And maybe in a different season of life, Hannah would have been like, yeah, I did promise that to God, but I don't think so. It's my baby. It's my baby. I'm keeping my baby. I'm not going to give my baby away, right? She could have been like that, but she isn't. She forms him, spiritually prepares him, and then without any hesitation, she gives the child to the ministry. And not only that, she gives an extravagant offering of thanks to God. God, this is my son. This is all I've ever wanted my entire life. But you know what? I'm going to give him because that's what I said. And he's going to be for your plans and your purposes. And I'm going to give thanks, even though I'm losing my son again. That's crazy. That's crazy, right? I'm going to give you thanks even though I'm losing my son again. I'm going to be sonless again. That's the kind of faith that Hannah had. And if it's not delayed, then maybe she doesn't become the person she needs to become to do all the things that God had called her to do. Yes, we see that? Good. The second point and the last point, that willingness to give everything back to God. I think that's a very important heart condition. Yeah, because a lot of us, man, we pick and choose. God, I don't really want this. You can have it. Like to a sibling, like, I don't want to eat this. Here, you take it, Esther. That's Aaron, by the way. No, but I think we have that attitude towards God. Like, there are really precious things in my life that I cannot give up. I cannot give away my significant other. I cannot give away this much money. Like, there's a lot of things I got to keep for myself, and I can't give it to God. But what Hannah knew, and I hope something we eventually come to learn, it's all God's, right? Everything we have is God's. And when you have too tight of a grip on everything around you, that's, you know what that's called? Idolatry. Uh, and Hannah easily, I actually, like, if she did that, nobody would have blamed her. I feel like, oh, yeah, it's your son, keep it. That's crazy to give him over to especially Eli. Eli's kind of weird, right? Yeah, we all think that, right? No, she's able to give the most important, precious prayer being answered and give him completely back to God. That is tremendous faith. Yeah. And I think if we look in our hearts, we struggle with that kind of faith, right? Man, there's a lot of things I want to keep for myself. But a very mature, like Hannah is, and I'm sure we're not, I definitely ain't. Hannah is this tremendously mature Christian, and she's able to say, even though I wanted this more than anything, at the end of the day, it's ultimately God's anyway. Yeah. And I wonder if there are things in our lives right now that we're clinging too tightly to and making something into an idol when it shouldn't be. And a child is a really good thing, I think. Like, I don't know, right? But a lot of us who are parents, I assume you think, oh, my child is a really great blessing in my life. But the right mentality and perspective is, it's not mine. Yes, it's God's blessed me with this gift, absolutely. And with any gift from God, we should be, what's it called? Do a good job with it, faithful with it, like a good steward of it. Yes, that's a great word. Like, be a good steward of it, be faithful with my opportunities. It's a blessing from the Lord, and I'm going to do my very best to raise this child. Yeah, of course, it's your responsibility too, but it's not just yours. And really, ultimately, everything is God's. And we can turn a really good thing, a blessing from God, into an idol in our lives, and it can mess us up. It can mess that thing up. Like, we often ruin things from God that are good by making it into something bigger than God in our lives. And Hannah could have done that, but she doesn't. And we see that. That's a crazy thing. I can't imagine what it must have felt like for her to get the one thing, literally the one thing that she's only ever wanted, and then being able to say, you know what, God, I got it, but it's yours. And because she has that kind of faith, because she's able to do that, Samuel can become the person that he's gonna become, and that's the way that she participates in God's will. Is that the kind of heart that we have inside of us? Is it? I don't think so. Not me neither. I don't think so. There's a lot of things I like and love. Like there's a lot of stuff I want to keep for myself. But can I, the new car I just bought, am I able to say that's God's? You know what? Like if I lose it again, ultimately that's God's. You know, it wasn't mine anyway. If it disappears now, I'm in big trouble. But anyway, the house that I live in, right? That's a great blessing. But is it my house or is it God's house? I know it sounds crazy because my name is on the title, but like all these blessings in my life, um, the people that we have, the things that we have, are you able to say all of this is from God? And if God takes it away, I'm still gonna have faith anyway. What are we able to say that? All these things that we have, I believe that they're from God and they belong to God. And whether He gives me more blessing or takes away these things that I consider blessing, am I still gonna be able to say thank the Lord anyway? Because that is what Hannah is able to do. Even though I have to give up my son, this extravagant offering of worship, thanks be to God anyway, because yes, He gave him to me, and I'm gonna give him back to the Lord, and that's the right heart posture that we all should have. Yes, being able to give God back everything is yeah, super mature, and that's sort of the bar I want to set for us today. Yeah, and maybe some of us we have to think about it. Am I clinging to something like way too tightly and too hard? Like if this thing doesn't work out in my life, am I gonna fall apart and lose faith? If you are, man, that's a dangerous thing in your life right now. That was the biggest point for today, the main point. And I just want to remind us one time before we close, Hannah's nobody. Hannah is just some random lady in the Bible again. Like God just uses random people who aren't spectacular or special or rich or famous. Like it's not that Hannah is a nobody in her society. I'm sure she probably has a bad reputation because she is barren, and her family members, the other wives, she's like being bullied, and it's not like nothing about it is extravagantly special or unique, but God is able to do extravagant things through her ordinary faithfulness. We see that again, right? We saw that in Ruth, and here we see it again in Hannah. And the Bible often is raising up ladies when during their time, ladies were not raised up at all. Like they were oppressed. But still, for some reason, God values these women. So many women in the Bible, even in the Old Testament, and even through her very difficult and common circumstances, she's one of, I'm sure, tons of ladies back then who were barren, but her circumstances are difficult, but very, definitely not uncommon. And God sees her faithfulness and uses her to be part of what He is doing. You guys see that? Like Hannah's not that special. We're not that special. I'm sure we're not that special. I mean, some of us are really smart and special, and you're gonna go and achieve amazing things. But we're just regular folks doing regular things, and with our very possible, like common everyday faithfulness, God can do extravagant things through. And Hannah is also a reminder of that. Yeah, Hannah, barren woman, just like just not a very important person. God uses her to have this child named Samuel, prophet Samuel, and Samuel is going to usher in a new season, a brand new season of faith for God's people. Like He's about to do something brand new in God's people's lives, and it comes from Hannah, who is faithful with her smaller circumstances. And I want to remind us, your faithfulness, it matters because God can do amazing things with it. The biggest point for today, let's close. Is there anything that you're too attached to? Yeah, maybe you're praying for something and it's a difficult season for you and God hasn't answered your prayer yet. But if you got it right now, would you be able to give it all back to God? Yeah. Like some of us are struggling mentally and emotionally. What if God heals you of that, but then takes that health away? Are you able to still say, thanks, God, anyway? Right? Are you able to say, whatever I want, I get it, but am I willing to, able to give it all back up? If God takes it all away from me again, if God takes everything from me today, am I still able to say, praise God, thanks God anyway? Huh? I don't know if I am. I know I say I'm ready to be homeless. I ain't. I don't think I ain't. You know what's when I was sick yesterday, I was like, oh God, this is punishment. Why are you punishing me? Like I felt really sick all day yesterday, and I went to bed at like 9 a.m. or no, sorry, 9 p.m. and then I slept like 10 hours, and I woke up at 7 a.m. But that little bit of unhealthiness, I was like, God, why are you punishing me? This is horrible. But if God took everything away, are you still able to say, God, thanks anyway? Like give God thanks and be extravagantly gracious and worship Him anyway. That sounds hard. Sounds really hard, but I think that's the correct posture. Everything I get is from God, and if it is all taken away, I still have God, and all that stuff was His anyway, and I'm gonna still praise, worship Him, have faith, and give God thanks. Right? Yeah. Let's try to do that. Let us pray.